This is the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and webinar series. Each episode, we explore critical topics affecting the workforce and workplace, with a key focus on new and emerging trends across high-growth industries. Whether we're discussing the skilled trades, youth wellness and education, or supports for persons with disabilities, you'll learn about some great resources to help you, or someone you know, navigate current and future careers. You can visit us at careerfoundation.com to learn about all of our programs and services. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and webinar series. This week, you're listening to our Empowering Abilities segment, which features topics like accessibility in the workplace, mental health and well-being, job search advice for persons with disabilities, and inclusion and diversity tips for employers. My name is Frank Bufano, job developer and outreach worker for the Empowering Abilities program. And on today's episode, we're very fortunate to be joined by Dilek and Veronica of Dyer Duman Design, who will be speaking to us about the myths of web accessibility. Dyer Duman Design is a branding agency co-founded by Veronica Dyer and Dilek Duman, located in Hamilton, Ontario. Dyer Duman Design specialize in bringing accessibility to the web and believe in equal access to information for all. They design, consult, and offer auditing and upgrading to ensure your website is on par with the AODA compliance accessibility standards. To find more information online, please visit dyerduman.design. I will now turn things over to Dilek and Veronica.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dilek, and I am the co-founder of Dyer Duman Design. Today, I and my business partner, Veronica, will talk about website accessibility. Please allow me first to start what you see on the screen right now, which is our presentation's cover slide. This is the graphic work our agency created for the communication vehicles of accessibility when we do and when we deliver and when we speak about the website accessibility. The A, as you see in the middle of the slide, is the initial of accessibility. It's our accessibility mascot designed by our student intern in 2018 by Keisha Matthews. You see some colorful arms, hands, different form and different shape trying to reach to A. That represents there should be many ways to access information because we believe everybody deserves equal access to information. Website accessibility is a huge and very hot topic matter. So we will focus on a small portion of website accessibility today, and we will take a look at the top 3 myths of website accessibility to leave behind in 2021. Here is our agenda items. We will do some introductions to the players, roles, and the rules of accessibility, and we will dive in the top 3 myths of website accessibility. 1, ugly and boring. 2, expensive. And 3, automated auditing is enough. Little bit introduction first. Ontario is the first government, Canadian province to pass the accessibility law in 2005. In order to develop some accessibility guidelines for public organizations as well as private organizations for both physical spaces and digital spaces. The name of this law is Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act. It's a little bit lengthy, so in the industry we usually call this law AODA. What this accessibility law asks from us, we must make new and significantly refreshed website accessible if our organization has more than 50 employees, and if you are a private organization, or if we are a private sector organization. And some rules about accessibility. First and most important, accessibility is such an important and hot topic that cannot be the only responsibility of one single department or one single person. It's a shared and collaborative responsibility between authorities, between designers and developers, decision makers, PR specialists, and marketing communication departments. And before we move to the next slide, I would love to actually list here what are those authorities are. And the most important authority is, of course, Ontario government, because Ontario government is responsible to follow the guidelines and the observe the legislation on the organizations. And the other important organization is World Wide Web Consortium. This consortium is an international team of experts. They do many things for web technologies. One of the most important publication of them is the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. So if anybody asks, okay, in terms of which guideline we should make our websites accessible, these are the guidelines published by World Wide Web Consortium. And deadline. And if anybody asks, since the COVID started, if the deadline has changed, no, the deadline is still January 2021. First myth, accessible websites are ugly and boring. We'll explain and try to prove it's not true, but let's say it right away. Accessibility has nothing to do with how visually authentic or beautiful or unique website is. In order to untangle this myth, maybe we should take a quick history class about web design. Here, what we see is the first web design, how it looks like. It's created by Tim Berners-Lee. He is a computer scientist and the inventor of World Wide Web. We see World Wide Web is a title on top of the page. We see a list of sentences with some links. Of course, the development of website technologies were a kind of, and still a kind of snowball. It was so rapid, so fast. In the middle of 1990s, we see designers started using the background images and some clip arts and decorative, images on the web pages. Then we use columns and grids. In the beginning of 2010, we see JavaScripts for more visual effects, movement graphics, shadows behind images. In the middle of 2010, the responsive web design became more popular because the technological changes on the mobile devices triggered people accessing and using their mobile phones and tablets. So this rapid improvements and developments on the web technologies definitely brought some opportunities to us. There are two very most important opportunities. One, web technologies became accessible, reachable, and usable by more people, and not just for designers and more designers and developers, by anyone actually. And it is more affordable. We can say you can build a website for $50 or $75 only. Please take a look at the screen. You are going to see three beautiful website example. Why we put those examples here? Remember, one of the benefit web technologies brought us, now having a website is not only for big brands, big companies anymore. You don't have to be enterprise level of organization owner in order to have a website. So you could be a small business owner, you could be the owner of, indie brand, and you can simply have a website to promote your service and programs. And you may not even need a web designer to have those kind of websites. They are beautiful. There are many website providers such as Squarespace, Shopify, Wix provide easy to build solutions and templates for end users. However, this improvements brought something besides opportunities, a possible actually threat, which is everything started to look like same. We would like to continue with a client example to clarify more what is this everything looks like same situation. What you see on the screen used to be the website of a well-known luxury boutique hotel in Hamilton, C Hotel by Carmen. They also provide event spaces for celebrations, weddings, special gatherings, social gatherings. What you see is the old website, and their old website was built and designed based on a ready-to-go website templates. Here are some summaries, actually, what was their concern were. One, it wasn't accessible. It was difficult to navigate the content and difficult to find the information. I will take us back to the previous slide and show actually the main navigation. Get your attention to the main navigation. We see 8 different main navigation, and almost each main navigation items have its sub-navigations, and sub-navigations have its own sub-navigations. It is quite difficult to navigate by humans' hands, and also think about that if anybody cannot use mouse, they are probably going to use the key button on their keyboard, or tab button, excuse me, on the keyboard to go the next link. So calculate how many times it's going to take from us to push the tab button on my key to access a submenu item. Second concern was performance. Of course, it was 11-second load time. It is right now in the industry standards. It's ideal to keep a load time of a page 2 seconds, maximum 3 seconds. We don't recommend 3 seconds, but maybe maximum. And authenticity. So no storytelling duty template load. So let's clarify first, what is template bloating? Ready-to-go websites come pre-branded. They have a visual language. They have already a visual language. They have color, fonts, image galleries. So when you choose or purchase to go with a ready-to-go website builder or template, that means you have to be aware of two things. One, either you will push your brand to fit into that pre-branded template, or you will rework on that template in order to manipulate its visual language. So both choices will give you some hard times. What you see on the screen is a custom-built web design for C Hotel. For this client, we created a dedicated visual language that speaks for their target market, their audience, while, of course, developing the website under accessibility guidelines. Next slide, you see mobile view of Sea Hotel's website. You can see on the right side a zoomed in style of the mobile navigation. We call it app-like mobile navigation. So you can access the menu items by simply clicking the navigate button, or there are some quick link options for the most visited, most desired content, such as rooms, weddings, and book a room. As a result, we gain, of course, some success in the end of the Sea Hotel's web design and development. Faster load time, definitely. Easy to find and easy to determine where is what is where is the content. And authenticity, custom web design telling the unique story of Sea Hotel. I would love to conclude this chapter by saying accessible websites are not ugly and boring. Templates are not designed. This is something that we have to understand. What you see is what you put into that template. And again, accessibility guidelines do not limit the fundamentals of graphic design, fundamentals of web design. What it is, creating a deep and meaningful communication between form and content. So now we will go and continue with the second myth of website accessibility. Accessible websites are expensive. I will roll the microphone to my business partner, Veronica, to continue with the second myth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica Dyer, 50% of Dyer Duman Design. I would consider myself creative director and also the lead for the development team on D&D. So I speak with a lot of authority when it comes to the actual building and the costs of accessible website. So the most important thing we can say is what's written here. The same languages and technologies are used to build accessible and inaccessible websites. So the languages that are most essential for reaching your user is the HTML, more importantly than the CSS, which controls the styles, more important than JavaScript, which is a special language library that can give you conditional logic and other interesting special effects can come from it. The most important thing that we build websites with is HTML. That's where the content of your site actually lives. And for those who are using assistive technology, the HTML is what will be read to them. So never forget that HTML is actually the act of writing a document, and we need that document to be written semantically, meaning that all the tags that we use to write our code with make sense and have a purpose, and we write it with a hierarchy, a logical order to our document. Accessibility starts from the beginning. Creating an accessible website is not more expensive or more time consuming than any website build if you build with the accessible frameworks from the beginning. So think of accessibility from the start. I'm going to read a little something that my partner and I were discussing earlier, and she put it into the best words possible. So I'm just going to read it straight for you all right now. First, remember that in web development, everything costs more if it's an afterthought. For example, if it's something you have to fit in or integrate once the bulk of work is done, it's going to require much more work. If you're planning to build or redesign your website, accessibility should be an acceptance criteria from the very beginning. Your project team should be in agreement with the level of accessibility they want to provide, and it should be taken into consideration throughout the phase of each project. So ultimately, it's a form of planning. You could compare it in your mind to almost like city planning or city building. It's much harder to replace all your sidewalks and stairs with ramps after the fact. But when you're building new developments, you should be considering the accessibility of those spaces from the beginning. And if you can plan and design beautifully and reasonably and logically for accessibility, it's not any more difficult. It's just a different logical framework that you should think of from the beginning. So one of the accessibility principles that we at D&D think is one of the easiest things for absolutely everyone to do on their websites, whether you're contracting a web development team and design team such as ourselves, or whether you're building something on Wix or Shopify, one of the things you want to look out for is alternative text. So alternative text actually describes every image on the page. And if you are running, say, a Shopify and selling some retail items, if somebody is having that web page described to them through assistive technology, they won't know what your product photo is unless you put a description on that photo. But something else to consider is actually that there is always one sightless individual looking at all your photos, and that individual without any sight is a search engine. A search engine needs that alternative text description of a photo, or else it won't come up in search results as anything if you don't put the data there for it to be interpreted. So we've often learned throughout our journey together as accessible building and designing folks is that accessibility and search engine optimization frequently are two sides of the same coin. So let's take a look right here at this lovely example. What would be the most appropriate alternative attribute for this image? Could be A, image of an orange cat. Could be B, image. Could be C, this image does not need alternative text. Or it could be D, an orange cat sitting in front of a sunny window watching a houseplant. So in our opinion, D is the best answer here because it gives context to the subject of the photo, not simply that it's a cat, but what is the cat doing? Where's the cat situated? What else is in the photo? And often people select A, but let me tell you what's less appropriate about option A here, which is image of an orange cat. Screen readers are actually always in the process of reading to an individual. Image of comes before any alt text is actually written. So we discourage from writing into your alternative text that this is an image because assistive technology is already indicating to the user that they're encountering an image. So you don't want to end up repeating yourself and creating an irritating screen reading experience. Okay, so here's another popular myth that automated auditing is more than enough. I'm going to take my website, I'm going to put it through a filter, you know, one of those softwares, and it's going to tell me boop, 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 boop. Here's everything that's wrong. So there is some truth to this in the sense that there are some technical benchmarks that you must hit in the building of your work to be accessible. And these filters will be able to say, yeah, you put alternative images on, you put alternative text on an image, but the filters can't determine, is this a good use of alternative text? Is it written correctly? Is it verifiable? Right now, Google's technology to actually read and interpret images without you putting any text is very, very limited. Image recognition technology is in its infancy. So what we're trying to say is that these filters can't determine the quality of your accessibility. Let me give another example of the physical world. You've put in a ramp to your business. Technically, you're accessible, but if that ramp is so steep that somebody is rolling backwards when they're trying to access it with their wheelchair, then you've failed your accessibility, your responsibility here. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how that works in the digital world as well. So automated tools are not able to judge if your content is meaningful for diverse human interaction. Inclusivity checks should be done by a human team to address a broad range of factors, including age, education, literacy really factors into here for your target demographic, for instance, culture, language, and overall usability. So let's take a look at this really excellent website here. Dilek, can you remind me the name of this website?
Of course, I will. And I will get a little bit copy from the next slide. It's a well-known website, actually, Neuralink.com.
Okay, so let's take a look at the original here. So Neuralink, this is a beautiful website for it. And a lot of people judge accessibility simply from the outside. which is less than ideal because accessibility is usually more apparent if you're actually using assistive technology. So to just look at it is rarely enough. However, of course, accessibility does cover visual elements too. But when we look at this site, we see organized boxes, big titles, simple images. It seems to us like, you know what, this isn't a confused, chaotic website. It must be high on accessibility. So we put this Neuralink website through an accessibility auditor, a simple automated auditor. And on the next screen, we'll show you what that looks like. So what the web accessibility evaluation tool, short form WAVE, does for us is it actually breaks down the anatomy of a page. So if we look at the little blue circles on the web page, you see they're labeled H1, H2. These little blue circles are used by this automated tool to indicate the order of items. And this is really helpful because when we said that your HTML needs to have a hierarchy to make sense, H1 is the top title that gives you the topic of the whole page, and H2s are subtitles that give you the topic of, say, a section on the page. So these little blue dots are helpful because if you see an H2 coming before an H1, this automated tool will flag that and say, your titles are out of order. But that's all the automated tool will tell you. It can't tell you how to rewrite your page. It can't tell you really what logical decisions to make next, but it can absolutely flag something that is technically incorrect. And I'd also like to point out that there are a lot of what we call contrast errors on this website. There's 30 of them. And that means that the contrast ratio between text and background image or background color is not enough for anyone without ideal vision to make use of. So we've worked with individuals with diseases that have affected their eyes such that they can't see contrast very well. But something else to consider is also aging eyes. We lose our ability to perceive without higher and higher contrast as we get older. And ultimately, we can think about demographics of illness or age, but sometimes it's best to not try to pigeonhole why somebody could or couldn't see, or, oh, my demographic doesn't include old people, so I don't care. We don't know, none of us know what experience our users are going through. And so the most important tenet that we believe at D&D is that everybody has equal rights to access information. And whether that means making sure the contrast is proper and perfection from the beginning on your website, or you include a tool that allows them to enter a high contrast mode, people need and deserve the ability to see more clearly, access more clearly, and interpret your website no matter what their ability is, without any assumption on our part what somebody's ability is. We should be serving up options for everybody to access and see. So in conclusion, something that comes up a lot for all our clients and something that we really want to impress on you is that accessibility is not a switch you turn on. It's not a series of settings you do in the background of a site. It has to be built meaningfully from the beginning. And as a result, it's not something that you turn on and forget about. Just like anything that humans build, it requires maintenance. And you may ask, D&D, why does it require maintenance? You built it with apparently all this awesome logic. Why do I have to maintain it? Two major reasons: your content changes and technology changes. And if we take the example of a retail store, inventory changes frequently. So making sure that all new images that are ever added to your site have alt text, that's a form of maintenance. Making sure that new content that goes onto your site is logically separated into a category or a department so that it's not all piling up in your navigation, that's accessibility. So those are examples where your content changing is the reason you need to maintain. A second item is that technology changes. So Dilek gave a great example earlier that in the mid-2010s, suddenly responsive design was huge and necessary. We couldn't have broken websites across tablets and mobile because everyone was using those devices. And it was a sudden change in technology that demanded a new kind of development and nowadays an ongoing maintenance that people are ready for. Accessibility will be the same kind of challenge. The devices we use will change. The standards for accessibility as set out by the Web consortium, those change as well. The laws governing Ontario through the AODA, those may change. And as ever, technologies like HTML, CSS, PHP, they're always being updated for security. The kind of web platforms that you build on, like Shopify, WordPress, Wix, all of those update for security. So all these different environments of technology need to blend and breathe and continue to grow together. It's not so different than managing your garden. It's going to look beautiful in summer when you've been manicuring it and taking care of it. And then the fall comes, and then the winter comes through, and then spring. And then when summer comes again, it's not just the perfect garden you left it as, it requires you to rebuild and reintegrate and continue to maintain. And that's really the situation that all websites are in as well. So Dyer Duman has had a lot to say about accessibility. And if I were to conclude with any thought I'd like to leave is that we're not only big champions of accessibility, we're big champions of inclusivity. And we hope we've given you an example of how these two things work together and how automated machines help us understand the technical benchmarks that we need to make, and that a human team of consultants and strategists, we're the folks that help bring inclusivity and better conversion rates to your digital platforms. I'm going to roll the microphone to my partner now so that she can say goodbye and her final thoughts as well.
Thank you so much for listening to us and spending your time to review this presentation with us. I can't agree more than enough for inclusivity because think about that, your journey, your design project when you started, not just literally for people with disability, but for everybody. We say accessibility for all. Do not consider and do not limit your view for your projects from only stick to accessibility guidelines. Please consider inclusivity from, as we actually listed in our previous slide, as from age, from demographics, from education. So much again. Please feel free contact with us. We are happy to answer your questions.
That's about all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank my guests Dilek and Veronica for taking the time to educate us. And I'd like to thank you, the listeners, for joining us for the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and webinar series.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and web series. To learn more about our workforce development initiatives, visit our website at www.careerfoundation.com and follow us on social media. To listen to our previous episodes, subscribe to the Future at Work podcast on iTunes or Spotify.